Thanks to the introduction of Sortie Level 2, aka the Basement, the long-lost imminent skill chain Magic Burst strategy has seen a resurgence in recent weeks. However, there are a few key mechanics involved in this strategy, knowledge of which has atrophied over the years of repeated savage blading. So this video serves as a refresher to the mages involved in this party setup. So I'm talking to the Geomancers, the Scholars, and the Black Mages out there. As a bonus, these tips can be directly applied to the Odyssey boss Ongo, with the exception of having multiple Scholars and the benefits of Red Mage subjobs such as Fast Cast and Haste. But the fact that most groups regard Ongo as the most difficult Odyssey boss indicates a potential knowledge gap, which this video aims to address. Up first, we need a quick conceptual overview of the Nuke Wall. About 10 years ago, some clever players discovered a way to circumvent one of the most difficult fights in the game at the time, Divine Might. SE's intent was for players to form an alliance of balanced parties, pay attention to hate mechanics, and utilize battle arena geography to slowly chip away at the party of 5 powerful Archangels. Until players discovered you could simply bring a full alliance of Black Mages, call out a time on the game clock, and simultaneously nuke the Archangels to death in nearly an instant. As a result, SE implemented the consecutive elemental damage penalty, aka the Nuke Wall. This mechanic applies to all notorious monsters and works as such. Anytime a nuke lands on an NM, it opens a 5-second window within which a second nuke will be reduced by 30% damage. Any additional nukes within this window will suffer a 60% damage reduction, with each additional nuke extending the window 5 more seconds. This occurs regardless of element or magic burst status. To visualize this concept, let's look at a timeline. Nuke number 1 hits at 0 seconds, suffers no damage penalty, and opens the 5-second nuke wall window. Nuke number 2 hits 2 seconds after the first nuke, suffers a 30% penalty, and adds a stack to the nuke wall window. Nuke number 3 hits 1 second after that, suffers a 60% penalty, and adds another nuke wall stack. Thus, when nuke number 4 hits 6 seconds after the very first nuke, it still suffers the 60% penalty due to the previous 2 nukes landing within 5 seconds. Another 5-second nuke wall stack is added, and the cycle repeats. We can now see the potential disadvantage to simply spamming nukes on NMs. 2 important notes here. First, a Rune Fencer's Rake ability, when combined with the proper elemental rune, will cut this penalty in half for the ability's duration. Another major note is that the nuke wall penalty is calculated before the hard damage cap of 99,999 is applied. Therefore, if you can hit 250k damage pre-cap, you won't even notice a 60% penalty and will still hit for cap damage. These 2 concepts will weigh heavily on your nuking strategy and will be addressed in the coming chapters.
Geomancer.
Generally, Geo will indie Acumen, Geo Malaise, and entrust indie Int on the Black Mage. As someone who doesn't play Geomancer, my advice in this video will revolve around the nuking component of the job, particularly how it relates to the nuke wall penalty and how you can best assist your group in damage output. You'll need to make an honest assessment of your nuking ability and classify yourself into one of 2 categories, a heavy hitter or a lightweight. A heavy hitter can hit cap damage on tier 5 magic bursts and doesn't get resisted very often. This requires excellent gear and a fair bit of job mastery. A lightweight, on the other hand, would be any mage who does less than about 60k damage in their unpenalized T5 magic bursts, or who experiences frequent nuke resists resulting in low damage. A lightweight will best benefit the party by delaying their magic burst to be at least 3rd in line behind the Black Mage and the Scholar. This is because their unpenalized damage, if it were to hit first, is too low to make up for the nuke wall penalty they impose on the heavy hitters who would hit after them. But if they time their cast to be 3rd in line, they're not compounding the nuke wall penalty at all, which is already capped at 60% at that point. All damage here is bonus damage. The fact that the nuke wall damage reduction is calculated before the damage cap is applied comes into play here. So let's take a look at 2 scenarios. First, we have the helpful Gimp. The Geo who's tired of casting bubbles and standing around, so he wants to contribute to the magic burst damage. His nuking gear isn't the best, but he's able to perfectly time his Stone 3 to hit as soon as the magic burst window opens, landing for just over 8600 damage. Black Mage and Scholar nukes quickly follow, combining to deal about 150k total damage to the mob. We see the Nuke Wall penalties as they occur, as well as the 5% bonus to earth damage applied by Stone Jaw. More on this concept in the Black Mage chapter. Because the damage is so low and the Black Mage and Scholar aren't capping under penalty, this party would benefit from a simple change in timing. By waiting 2 more seconds to begin casting, the Geo can land third in line, eating the 60% Nuke Wall penalty while gaining a 5% Stone Jaw boost from the Black Mage. This simple change allows both the Black Mage and Scholar to cap their damage, while only costing the Geo 5k damage. The overall effect is a net gain of over 50,000 damage dealt to the mob. It's an increase of 36% damage just by waiting 2 seconds for the Geo to pull the trigger. While this may be an extreme example, it does highlight the importance of understanding the Nuke Wall penalty, and it demonstrates how well-intentioned players can ultimately hurt the damage output of the party just by not knowing the game mechanics. An alternative scenario is that of the Dream Team. In this scenario, all mages are doing 6-figure damage before penalties and caps are applied. There's no need to hold back here. Even if we optimize the spell order for penalties and bonuses, we only gain 14k damage. Forget the fact that this kind of timing and coordination would be practically impossible. It's clear that in the Dream Team scenario, the order doesn't matter nearly as much as squeezing in as many magic bursts as possible. We'll expand upon this in the coming section.
Scholar.
Scholar is a job that is versatile to a fault. This party setup places many demands on a Scholar and requires a deep understanding of the job and very well-established macros. Add in the need to coordinate with a second Scholar and it can turn into an ugly situation for an unprepared group. This video is too narrow in scope to turn an amateur Scholar into a pro, but I can offer a few valuable tips to elevate your play. The first may sound obvious, but it's the most important. Communicate with your party. Make sure you know which Scholar is going to skill chain so you're not stepping on each other's toes and wasting valuable stratagems. Make sure you're casting the appropriate weather on yourself and the Black Mage when monsters or modes change element. And keep your party aware of your stratagem count. This simple macro is worth a spot on your macro palette, because you can easily inform your party when your gems are getting low. This will display how many stratagems you have on cooldown, and the time remaining to the next one gets refreshed. Triple bursting. In the last section, I mentioned the need to magic burst as many times as possible within the window, particularly when you have the Dream Team setup. This is an area where the Scholar has a direct impact based on spell selection. Have you ever noticed that some weapon skills, especially those used by trusts, have really long animations and seem to allow for a greater follow-up skill chain or magic burst window? Well, it's not an illusion. Those who use the skill chains add-on have undoubtedly experienced this with Celtius. Here I use Rodra's Storm, which requires a 2.5 second delay and then gives a 7-second window for follow-up, totaling 9.5 seconds. However, when Celtius uses Revelation, it has a 6-second delay before a follow-up weapon skill can be used, and it has a 6-second window to close, totaling 12 seconds. For a melee DD, this means having the patience to sit there for 6 seconds, waiting to hit your weapon skill macro. But for a mage, this translates to 2.5 extra seconds of magic burst window within which you can nuke. Elemental magic and helix spells have a similar dynamic when combined with imminence. Let's look at some examples. Opening with fire provides a 3-second delay, followed by a 7-second window. Closing with stone has a 3-second follow-up delay, and a 6-second window, which allows us 9 seconds to magic bursts. However, closing with Helix, we can see that opening with Arrow provides the same 3-second delay and 7-second window, but closing with Nocto Helix gives a 5-second delay followed by a 6-second window, totaling 11 seconds. As you can see, closing with Helix buys your mages 1 extra second of magic burst window. It may not sound like much, but it's literally the amount of time you need to squeeze in a third magic burst, as displayed here. My last general tip for Scholars is to make sure your Imminence macros minimize delay between spell number 1 and spell number 2. Shaving off just 1 second per skill chain can allow for 2 to 3 extra skill chains during Tabula Rasa. And make sure you allow plenty of time for the full magic burst window to close before starting the next round. It's easy to get lost in the tabula rasa sauce and start spamming skill chains over and over again, but there's no point to closing with a Helix spell if you're just going to start the next skill chain before your mages have a chance to triple burst.
Black Mage.
Oh, the Black Mage, the brightly burning candle sure to fade back into obscurity before long, but for now let's bask in our days of glory while they last. There are two major non-gear related tips I can provide to the Black Mages out there. First is to practice your spell timing to maximize the magic burst window. This will depend on your fast cast gear, and it's extremely helpful to have a consistent scholar here. Use audio or visual cues in the game to know when to hit your macro so that your spell lands right after the magic burst window opens. This will allow you to hit those triple bursts as long as your scholar is closing skill chains with Helix. If you're playing with a scholar who doesn't use macros with built-in delay, it can be difficult or even impossible to find the rhythm. Just try your best and err on the side of being slightly late rather than slightly early and preempting the MB window entirely. My second major tip is to understand how the Jaw spell bonus works. Ever wonder what this cryptic description means? Successive use enhances spell potency? Well, think of it like a dancer applying box step, but for elemental magic. Each time you cast a Jaw spell of the same element, a bonus of 5% is applied to any successive spell of that same element, up to 25% max, or 5 stacks. The stacks wear off after 60 seconds before gear bonuses, but your Empyrean legs add up to 50 seconds to this duration with the +3 version for a total of 110 seconds. Looking at our timeline, we can see that less than a minute into the fight, we can secure that 25% max damage bonus to all earth magic by using Stoneja every 10 seconds. With Haste and Embrava, your recast timer should be about 8.5 seconds, so this is feasible even without the Empyrean legs. But you can see how this one piece of gear would add a lot of cushion to these stacks falling off. Consistently include Stoneja in each magic burst, making sure to swap in your Empyrean legs, and you'll maintain 5 stacks for the entire fight, assuming it's not a boss that changes elements like Gartel, in which case you'll have to start over again from stack number 1 with the new element. Well, that's all for today. I hope you found these tips helpful, and if you have any questions or tips of your own, please leave them down in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.